All right. So, if you're wondering, I know I asked you guys yesterday if you wanted to read a book. Thank you for joining me. If you're here, this will be recorded. So, if you're watching it later, totally fine. I decided on this series of books because one, it's a series. So, after we finish this one, we can read the next one and then we can read the next one. And I liked some of you guys actually said some good titles, and I was totally like, oh, yeah, that'd be a good one. But the only problem is, some of the titles you guys said are like super long, and it's hard to
Bye.
read a huge long book over a big period of time because it would take so long. So that's why I decided to read this book because we're gonna be able to finish it in like 2 weeks. So you'll be able to get these points in like 2 weeks. So that's why I decided to go with this book, in case you're wondering. And I've heard it's really good. So once again, it's called it's the Island series, and this is book 1, Shipwreck, and it's by Gordon Corman, who's super awesome. So it's written by days of the week. It has the day of the week, the day, then it says like 20, like 10. So this would be like, what is this? This is 8, 9. So this would be 8 o'clock at night is what it would be. So it has like military hour time. Okay. So this is the prologue, and it's important to look at the date of the prologue because the date of the prologue is July 15th, and you'll see why that's important in a minute. For a heart-stopping moment, the bow of the Phoenix pointed straight up at the boiling black clouds of the sky. Then a wave broke in a cascade of spray, and the schooner was headed down, plummeting into the trough. Shakily, she righted herself and began the long climb up the next 30-footer. So, right, all that was about a boat that's in like a storm, okay? About a boat. A streak of forked lightning silhouetted her against white water. She was 2-masted, small for a schooner. Her deck wasn't much larger than the tallest of the waves. Her sails were down and shrewd, and she moved under engine power, steered gamely in the oncoming seas. Suddenly, a white flash. The mainsail began to rise. It was unthinkable. No vessel could survive such a storm-carrying sail. Pandemonium, anger shouts from the deck, a desperate run for a halyard, and then a brutal power of the storm filled the half-open sail with violent wind. The ship spun around and heeled over, its twin masses dipping dangerously close to the punishing swells. The next wave took the Phoenix broadside. A torrent washed over the deck. There might have been a scream when the body hit the water, but the howling of the gale was all that could be heard. So that was the prologue. That's basically like a foreword, okay? We're going to be coming back to this little part later. But that was on July 15th, and now chapter 1 is July 9th. So the prologue is like giving us a little insight to we're going to assume shipwreck that happened. So now we're on Sunday, July 9th, chapter 1. Luke Haggerty squeezed into the tiny bathroom and pulled the door shut behind him. Not bathroom, he reminded himself, the head. Luke knew he'd been sentenced to this boat for the next month. What he didn't know was that it was going to be a never-ending vocabulary lessons. The walls, bulkheads, not beds, berths. The kitchen was a galley, a room was a cabin, and who cared? Suddenly pounding on the door, was it still called a door? What are you doing in there? Growled the voice of Mr. Radford, the Phoenix first mate. Writing an opera? Let's go, Archie! Luke reached for his belt and bashed his elbow against the small sink. The bathroom head was a shoebox. Ow. More pounding. You okay, Archie? My name is Luke. Even as he said it, he knew it was a waste of breath. All the way from Guam Airport to the marina, Radford had leaned on the horn and cursed out Archie the truck driver, Archie the cop, Archie the pedestrian, Archie the cyclist, and even Archie the priest. So this first mate of the boat, Mr. Radford, apparently calls everyone Archie for whatever reason. By pressing himself into the corner and resting his left hip against the sink, Luke managed to finish up in the head. He hesitated. The flusher was some kind of pump. Instructions were scribbled on the plastic-coated card tacked to the wall. Bulkhead. Open valve, pump 3 times. Close valve, pump 3 times. Duck. Duck? Why duck? Wham! He smacked his head on the low doorway on the way out. So the flusher, they're talking about the toilet, and they're on a boat, so it's like weird. It's not like the ones we have in our houses. Wham! He smacked his head on the low door on the way out. Watch your head, grunted the mate. Not at all better than late. Not at all better late than never. Did you remember to close the valve? Luke nodded. What's the big deal? The head flushes the seawater. Last thing you want to go on board is let the sea on board. That's a one-way ticket to the bottom. Luke felt queasy. Ever since he learned he was coming here, his uneasy dreams had been a catalog of all the ways to die at sea. Hurricanes, tidal waves, giant sharks, and collisions with super tankers, just to name a few. Now he had to add toilets to his list of things to worry about. Okay, he sighed. Where's my cabin? Radford brayed a laugh. You're standing in it, Archie, but this is his voice trailed off. He had been about to say the hallway outside the bathroom, but in the dim light he could make out 4 narrow bunk beds. Bunk berths? 2 on either end, 2 mini dressers, all built right in the bulkheads. These are your quarters. Quarters, repeated Luke, as in quarter of a room? Ain't a luxury. This ain't a luxury liner, Mr. Radford shrugged. Archie met Archie. Lights out at 2200. That would be 10 p.m. He heaved himself into the champion way out onto the deck. Luke cast his eyes around. A tousled head of sandy hair poked out from one of the upper bunks. What time is it? Sleepy eyes peered down over rounded, heavily freckled cheeks. 21:45, Luke replied. I think that's 22:15. The boy groaned and yawned at the same time. My system is totally messed up. I was on planes for 21 hours to get here. Tell me about it, said Luke, beginning to fill the narrow drawer with the contents of his duffel bag. Why Guam? It's supposed to be just us in the ocean, replied the other boy. No ports, no nothing. The brochure said we probably won't even see another boat for a whole month. He sounded mournful, like it was a death sentence. Luke applied a hip check to the overstuffed drawer. Nobody showed me any brochure. Really? The boy was surprised. How do you end up here? The horrible movie replayed itself in Luke's head as it had so many times before. The crack of the judge's gravel, the single word guilty, his mother tears. And later in the judge's chambers, I'm reluctant to sentence a 13-year-old to Williamston, especially on first offense. There is one other possibility. It's called CNC, charting a new course. Luke cast his roommate a strange smile. I'm a convicted felon. He held out his hand. Luke Haggerty. Wow, the boy's eyes widened. I'm only here because I fight with my sister. I'm Will, he added, shaking hands. Will Greenfield. Fight with your sister? Luke raised his eyebrows. So your parents had you put on an ocean between you? Nah, she's in the girls' cabin next door. I guarantee you'll hate her. I should have been an only child. Luke laughed shortly. I am an only child. All right. So it's kind of like military school, except for it's on a school. It's not on a school. It's on a boat. Okay. So what's happening is so far Luke was sentenced here because apparently he was convicted of a felony. And instead of a judge sending him to like juvenile detention center, which is where like you go if you're a child, or like it's like prison for children kind of. He's sentenced to this boat called Chartering a New Course. So it's going to be like juvenile detention, but on a boat. And then apparently Mr. Will, well, not Mr., but Will's here too because he fights with his sister, and his sister's here too. We just don't know his sister's name yet. It doesn't help if you have any brothers and sisters. Your parents are on your case extra. The lights flashed once and winked out. Except for a dim glow from the porthole, the cabin was in total darkness. Hey, guess what? Text-to-text connection. Porthole was one of our vocabulary words a few weeks ago, which is it's a window in a boat. Well, I guess I've decided to go to sleep, Luke said sarcastically. He established himself on the lower berth, on the opposite side of the room. Uncomfortably, he curled up in the coolest spot he could find. For a few minutes, the only sound that could be heard was the creaking of the mooring lines and the soft lapping of water against the hull. Then, what felony? Will asked. Luke laughed without humor. Not murder, if that's what you're worried about. But even as he said it, the voice of the prosecutor was ringing in his ears. Felony, possession of a firearm. Come on, coaxed Will. I'll tell you why I'm here. What was it? Breaking and entry, vandalism, I know. Assault. That'll be my next felony, yawned Luke. If I ever get my hands on the kid who put that gun in my locker. Ooh. So firearms and guns. So he's saying just right there, we know that he's here because he had possession of a gun and in a school property, a locker. And it's one thing to have possession of a firearm, but it's another thing to have possession of a firearm at school. So that's even more dangerous. But now we're on chapter 2, and it's Monday, July 10th. So yesterday was the 9th at night, and now it's the 10th at 08:20. So that's 8:20 in the morning.
Miss Kneifel, once we had a firearm in our school, like, would that be like, yeah.
Yeah, you would be expelled from school, and you would probably also have to, like, go to court for it and stuff. It's illegal to have any firearms on property here because we're a school. Even if you're licensed to carry, you still can't bring it onto, like, into the school. So unless you're a cop, a police officer, that's different. But, you know, you can have a license to carry a gun, and that's fine, but still we're like a gun-free zone. So you still couldn't bring it into the school even if you had a license to carry it. Just for a little extra rundown of life.
What about a knife?
Same thing. Captain James Cascadin was a rugged, leathery face that looked like it had been rubbed against every coral reef in the 7 seas. He was 6'5", so he had to duck through the tight hatches and companionways of the Phoenix. By the way, Phoenix is the name of the boat. But the movement was so natural, almost grateful, that Luke had the impression that the man had been born and lived the past 60-plus years on a boat like this one. Captain Cascadin hated long speeches, except when he was the person giving them. None of you came to me because you want to learn the ways of the sea. His voice was a deep brass with a rich tone of bassoon. Many of you are from troubled backgrounds, some including difficulties with the law. A flash of penetrating eyes. Aboard this ship, all that means nothing. The slate is clean. I don't care about who you are now. All that matters is who you will be. A crew. My crew. And all together we will serve this vessel. Join me and we'll sail off to adventure. Like I've got a choice, Luke mumbled under his breath. Captain Radford was there to keep the audience in line. Shut up, Archie. When the captain talks, only the captain is talking. The first adventure turned out to be swabbing the deck. Luke found himself mopping and fuming. Only 3 of the 6 crew members had arrived for the trip. How fair was it for half the people to do all the work? He slaved alongside Will, listening to his bunkmate bicker with his sister Liza. Why are you mopping there? I already did that part. Yeah, it needs to be done again. Luke smiled in spite of himself. Will and Liza were such opposites of each other that it almost made sense they didn't get along. He was husky. She was skinny. His face was round. Hers was angular. His eyes seldom left the deck and the job at hand. She seemed bright and fascinated by everything that was going on around her. She watched the captain and Radford and even Luke with a friendly interest. I hear you're a felon, she said cheerfully. Luke's face flamed red. The Greenfields may have hated each other, but they obviously didn't mind sharing a little gossip. It's a long story, he muttered. We almost got a criminal record once, she went on, but our lawyer got the charges dropped when we promised not to do it again. Hey, Mr. Radford called from partway up the Hass where he was adjusting some rigging. Less talk and more work, Archie. Same with you, Veronica. Well, that explains where the names came from. Mr. Radford was a reader of literature, comic books. So Liza, he's calling the girls Veronica, and he's calling the boys Archie, Mr. Radford. Luke turned back to where brother and sister were snapping at each other. This family was some piece of work. Real funny to joke about criminal records to a guy who had one that would never go away. Like you could get arrested for sibling squabbling anyways. What kind of nutjob parents would send their kids halfway around the world just because they argue like every other brother and sister on the planet? And then it happened. 1 second they were bickering, and next Liza crocked back her mop and took a home run swing at her brother's head, missing him by half an inch. It was fast. Luke blinked and almost missed it. In a split second, Radford was out of the rigging and poised it between them. If you two want to kill each other, Don't do it on my watch. And then they were back to work as if nothing had happened. So not only do they fight with each other, they like physically fight with each other. Maniacs, thought Luke. I'm surrounded by maniacs. The job of swabbing was short, if not sweet. For a 60-foot boat, there was practically nowhere to stand on the Phoenix. The whole center of the vessel housed a system of sails and masses, booms, lines, rigging that supported it. So that's all the stuff you need for sails. The cockpit and main took up most of the aft space. The sleeping quarters dominated the forward part of the boat, and the galley and cargo hatch towards the middle, amidship, like a middle ship in the middle of the ship. So all that was left to walk was a thin path of deck, ringing the schooner and the couple of very tight cut-throughs between the masts. Equipment was piled on every surface: poles, fenders, anchors, the Phoenix 12-foot dingy, and what seemed like enough rope to stretch across any ocean. In a way, it was brilliant, Luke thought. There was room for everything except people. Surely even Williamson provided more space for its inmates. An only child who had never even shared a bedroom, he could almost feel the squeeze in his gut. The idea of living on a floating sardine can made him shudder. All right, so this kid's like been an only child, never had to share a room or anything, and now he's on a boat with other people, and he's like, oh my God, not enough space. Nolan.
What about how the gun get in his locker? Did he say a kid put it in there?
Well, he said a kid put it in there, but I'm sure as we continue reading the book, we'll know. He said
that also, what about a Nerf gun or an airsoft gun at school?
I'm pretty sure none of that, nothing weapon-like at all. Even though a Nerf gun couldn't like hurt someone, I don't think any of that's allowed at school. So don't bring it.
What's an airsoft gun?
It's like shoots little pellets, like little plastic beads.
Yep. No, I'm not bringing that.
In addition to being the first mate and the warden, Mr. Radford was also the ship's cook. At lunch, in a tiny gallery, he proved that he could open a tin of baked beans as well as any great chef in Europe. While cooking was the mate's job, cleaning up and washing dishes turns out to be just another part of the adventure. The gallery was ventilated only by a small smoke head of the cabin top. It seemed twice as hot as the rest of the boat. As the rest of Guam, for that matter. Luke and Will did the work in sweaty silence. Talking just didn't seem much worth an effort. After lunch, Mr. Radford headed to the airport to meet a plane, and the 3 crew members were given a tour of the cockpit. Now, what's the most important instrument here? Asked Captain Cascaden. The wheel, suggested Will. Of course not, snapped Liza testingly. How about the radio? What's downstairs in the navigating room, stupid? Will snapped. Not downstairs, the captain amended. On shipboard, we say below. How about the compass, suggested Liza brightly. If her brother's constant attacks bothered her, she didn't show it. Probably, thought Luke, because she didn't have a mop in her hand. All of those are important, the captain agreed, but his hand touched a small, ordinary-looking switch on an instrument panel. This is the most important of all of them. This is a blower switch. It turns on the fan that airs out the engine room. Never, ever start the engine on a boat without starting the blower first. Otherwise, fuel's vapors have built up and could explode when the engine ignites. He stared at them with burning black eyes. If you forget anything else you have learned here, remember this one thing. That turned to be out the favorite line of Captain Cascaden. Like when he told the group that the boat does not respond immediately to the turn of the wheel. It's not like your bicycle that goes where you tell it. It's not like your bicycle that goes where you tell it to when you tell it to. An inexperienced helmsman will oversteer because he keeps on turning until he feels the ship change direction. If you forget anything else you learn here, remember this one thing. So the captain's going to keep on saying that, even though he wants you to remember all things, basically. He also said it's about storing ropes and lines in coiled positions to keep them straight and ready to use. Trying to sail down in a storm and ever cleaning up sheets and quarters. Captain Cascaden pointed to shore. Oh, look, here's Mr. Radford bringing us 2 more crew members. It's important to make the newcomers feel welcome. And if you don't forget anything else, Luke whispered to Will, remember this one thing. So Luke's mocking the captain. Obviously, Luke's got a little bit of an attitude, okay? Will covered up his snickers with some coffee. The 2 new arrivals looked terrible, but a lot could have been the day-long flights. Charla Swan seemed to be about Luke's age. She was tall and rail thin and moved like a cat. There was a no-nonsense look to her. Her hair was plain, her clothes were simple. Her appearance was engineered for efficiency rather than show. Ian Sikorsky was at least a couple years younger. A slight boy with sad eye was already embroiled in the battle of Radford over his luggage. The mate had removed a sleek laptop computer with a wireless monitor, and Ian seemed ready to swim home rather than part with it. Soon the captain got himself in the middle of it. Crewmen charting the new course is about casting off your old life for a new and better one. But what about the internet? The boy asked. We have our own internet out here, the Cascaden assured him. It's called teamwork. A ship and her crew coming together to form a web of comrades and cooperation. What electronic gadget could give you that? Bradford put it less poetically. No computers, Archie. CNC rules. It goes home. UPS. PDQ. Ian looked so miserable that he barely raised his head to walk up the galleyway onto the deck. Hey, Ian, Luke said kindly. When you see our room, you'll be happy it had to go. You need all the space we can get. Stop a big boat, big up. How do you stop a big boat? You like turn off the engines when you know it needs to stop, and eventually it just stops, I think.
But it'll just keep drifting.
There's probably like paddles that can also stop dragging it and stuff, or an anchor, all things like that.
Well, anchors, you don't. While the boat's moving, an anchor on a big ship wouldn't be able to drop. It has a locking mechanism.
It's only 60 feet, so it's not like a cruise ship or anything. So I'm not totally sure. Feel free to look it up and get back to me. Well, okay. Mr. Redford, Captain Cascaden said cheerily, that's the whole lead then. One more, Skipper, the mate replied. The captain frowned. Now, how can that be? There aren't any more flights due in. This isn't your regular Archie, said Radford. This kid's coming by private jet. Oh, snap. So they got Luke, who is apparently a felon. Will and Liza, who are brother and sister. And now we have Ian and Charla, who came on a plane, and they got one more to come, and apparently he's coming on a private jet. So that means whatever he got in trouble for, his family probably has some type of money or some type of situation where he can go on a jet. We're only reading one more chapter, Julian. So whenever I'm done with this chapter, we'll be done. Mr. Nolan.
It says that you would stop a big ship. It says, in fact, these ships may require as much as 5 miles to stop. So that means that they turn it off for 5 miles before shore.
Right. So they probably have like, maps and GPSs to tell them like how far away they are from things. So then they just stop it, and then eventually the boat stops.
And it also says that half a mile before shore, it would drop a big paddle to slow it down even more. And when they're at shore, they'd put down an anchor when they're stop moving.
Good to know. Thank you. All right. Now it is July 10th, and we are at 12, 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're at 6 o'clock in the evening, okay? As soon as the door of the Learjet opened, J.J. Lane's one-of-a-kind designer sunglasses fogged up with an oppressive blast of Guam humidity. Whoa, aloha, the 14-year-old boy compared, handing the glasses over to his traveling companion, Dan Rappaport, for cleaning. Rappaport was personal assistant to the world-famous movie star Jonathan Lane, JJ's father. Lately, though, it seemed like his new job was the keeper of JJ, who turned into a real Hollywood brat. Aloha is the way you say it in Hawaii, Rappaport told his charge. I don't know what they say here. JJ shrugged. Doesn't matter. He hopped down to the tom rack. Where's my luggage? Rappaport permitted himself a secret smile as he handed over a small duffel bag. No, really, JJ assented. There's half a dozen suitcases in the cargo hold. Rappaport shook his head. Well, we left those when we stopped in Honolulu. On purpose? Sen gave us a list, JJ, and it didn't say anything about hang gliders. The movie star's son folded his arms across his chest. I'm not going. Suit yourself, said Rappaport, but you're not coming back with me. Have a nice month in Guam. And oh yeah, I canceled your credit cards. Okay, so Mr. JJ, obviously having a bad time already. His credit cards have been canceled. He doesn't have any of his stuff. Snap. JJ's reaction was equal parts shock and fury. I'm calling Dad. He pulled out his cell phone and dialed furiously. He listened for a moment, then threw his phone down on the pavement. My service has been terminated. You're lucky. It's midnight in LA right now. I doubt your father would be thrilled to hear from you. Rappaport took a deep breath. Listen, JJ, when we brought you a case of champagne to the listen, JJ, when you brought a case of champagne to the 8th grade dance, you worked hard to keep you out of the papers. When you sold the video of your father's pool party to Entertainment Tonight, I covered for you. When you did all the upscale shoplifting on Rodeo Drive, it was me who arranged for your father to make that donation to the Policeman's Brotherhood Fund. When you took your father's Harley and drove it through the plate glass window of the art gallery, that's when it became time to get you out of town for a while. Okay, so that's a big fat list of everything JJ's done. Okay, stole his father's Harley, was shoplifting, brought alcohol to an 8th grade dance. Clearly, JJ needs to be on this little military boat ship camp. Out of town means Santa Bayarda, maybe the Tahoe, not Mars. You're a flake, JJ, said Rappaport, but you're not an idiot. Even you can see that these little happenings of yours are getting worse and worse. You're going to kill somebody one of these days, maybe even yourself. The boy wrinkled his nose. You're enjoying this, aren't you? A grin split Rappaport's face. Oh, yeah. He noticed the CNC logo on the hat of the man striding across the tamarack towards them. This must be Mr. Radford now. He turned to the sailor and held out his hand. I'm Dan Rappaport and Jonathan Lane from Jonathan Lane's office. Radford brushed right past him and took the duffel bag from JJ. Okay, Richie Rich, we sail in an hour. Totally ignored Rappaport, withdrew his hand. For a brief instant, he looked like he wanted to rescue JJ from his fate. But then he remembered the art gallery window and the Picasso with the tire tread in it. He got back on the Learjet and pulled the door shut behind him. All right, we're going to stop there. Tomorrow we'll read some more. Thank you guys who joined. So far, we know that there's trouble kids and they're on a what seems like a military school, but instead of a school, it's a boat. So we're going to see what else is happening. So I will see you guys later tomorrow. Reading RTI 8:30. Bye, guys.